Hello again. Welcome to the final and eighth session of at ACI APAC Online. A good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the Middle East, Asia, and Asia Pacific. Last week, we heard our world business partner Marsh leading the discussion on how post-COVID digitalization changed the risk profile of airports. It certainly was sobering, but also eye-opening, as our industry in particular has embarked on the inevitable journey of becoming increasingly digitized. We appreciate the interest in the subject matter, and for those who missed it last week, do visit our YouTube channel for the playback. As I said at the start, this is our final and eighth session. Following the first CEO's Forum, which kicked off this at ACI APAC Online series, there was quite a bit of interest to hear from more airport CEOs and leaders in our region. So today, we are excited to present to you our CEO's Forum 2.0. What's the new normal look like? Helping us to moderate and lead the conversation today is an airport member colleague, dialing in from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Nik Zakaria is General Manager of Group Corporate Communications at Malaysia Airports Holdings Berhad. Anis, thank you so much for joining us. May I pass the time to you to introduce our airport leaders today and lead in the conversation.
Thank you, Jeannie. It is indeed my pleasure to be part of this very popular CEOs 2.0 forum. But first, before we get started, let me extend greetings from Malaysia to all our audience who's tuned in for the session at the moment. Apa khabar? And that is hello and how are you in our national language. I hope that all of you are well and that you are all keeping healthy and safe. Now, without further ado, let us get started. In this segment, we are honored to have with us two airport leaders from different parts of the region, demonstrating the rich diversity of the ACI Asia-Pacific community. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jean-Michel Ratron. Mr. Michel is the CEO and Director General of Aéroport de Tahiti. Mr. Ratron, it's actually Monday night in Tahiti right now. And I hope you've had a chance to have your dinner, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, so we also have Mr. SGK Kishore, Executive Director and CEO of GMR Hyderabad International Airport Limited, dialing from Hyderabad, India. Good morning to you, Mr. Kishore.
Good morning, Anis.
Okay. Both Mr. Ratron and Mr. Kishore are directors on the ACI Asia Pacific Regional Board, so we do appreciate your service and your leadership on the board also. Gentlemen, it is really a pleasure to meet you, albeit through the digital platform across a monitor, but that is really the sign of the times that we are in today, that we are still in the midst of the pandemic, and that you've had to adapt how you lead and manage your team during these times. So let me start with the first question. Mr. Kishore, I will start with you. I remember you saying in one of the earlier interviews with ACI that you believe that one of the most important skills that a leader should have is actually people management skill, and that the ability to nurture and take care of the well-being of your team during these trying times is one of the key factors for you. So obviously, none of us had expected the pandemic to last or to persist in this manner. So how have you managed to keep the spirits and the morale of the team, especially during these times? Can you share some anecdotes or some recent experiences of how you have managed to do that with your people?
So thank you, Anis, and good evening, Jean-Michel. It's a pleasure to be a participant in the CEOs Forum on a very important topic of post-pandemic or pre-pandemic, what we have been doing, and post-pandemic, what we are going to do. The pandemic is still continuing, and as you rightly mentioned, Anis, I am a big believer that human resources are our valuable assets. And especially during the periods of challenge like this, it is very important we give the safety and protection to all our human resources keep motivating them, because as you know, aviation is one mode of transport which is operational 24/7, whether it is COVID pandemic or no pandemic. This is very, very important to see that this is the only line of operation only line of transport which was operational. And it was very important to see that the airport's business continuity happens. So we in GMR recognizing the value of the human resources and the importance of keep motivating them to attend duties and to also keep them safe themselves. We have taken slew of various measures to see that all the airport community is safe. First and foremost, what we have done is we have started a 24/7 control room, wherein any employee, whether it is the airport's employee or even the stakeholders' employees, can dial in this control room number and access any information facility which they would require in terms of emergency, be it in terms of medicines, be it in terms of hospitalization, be it in terms of getting an ambulance. So whatever is required, it was 24/7, it was open for people to get in touch. The other most important thing what we have done is the initiative of testing, tracking, isolating, and then treating. So this is very important because as you know, all the airport, especially the operations people, be it the airport operations, airside, ARFF, the ground handlers, the airlines, it is very important to test them very frequently. So what we have done in the second wave, as you know, in India, the second wave was much more severe. During the second wave, every week we made testing mandatory. And once we identify someone has tested positive, we use an artificial intelligence algorithm to see who all got in proximity with these employees. So tracking the remaining employees, isolating them. We have created isolation facilities within the airport so that the employees can be shifted away from their families and get into this isolation facility. And then depending on whether he is symptomatic or asymptomatic, treatment facilities. We are tied up with leading hospitals so that the treatment opportunities are seamless. So this is one thing what we have done. The second thing is a proactive vaccination for all the airport employees, including their family members. So we advocated with the governments to recognize airport employees as the frontline workers, and we have been successful in getting them vaccinated. Today, almost 60 to 70% of our employees are already vaccinated. And again, CEO town halls to talk to them, communicate to them that we are there. Me and the senior leadership visiting the airport frequently to tell them that we are with them. And also giving them a lot of health-based programs, health and yoga-based programs, so that they keep themselves healthy, their family members healthy. So these are some of the things which we have done. Good communication continuously from the senior leadership to tell them they are the most valuable resources, providing them all the facilities, creating information and awareness among them what all is available, what the management is doing. I think this was very created a good impact. And as you know, Hyderabad is the vaccination center for the entire world. 70% of the COVID vaccines are being produced in Hyderabad. So the cargo operations were very critical to see that the vaccines get exported out of India and also foreign vaccines getting imported. So we have been very successful in spite of the severe second COVID wave what we had recently. And I think hats off to all the airport employees and the stakeholder employees that they have been in the forefront, like the warriors in the battlefront, and they have ensured that the airport ran without any problems.
Thank you, Mr. Kishore. Mr. Ratron, you previously said that, I'm going to quote you, "My job above all is to give a perspective to emergency action, to avoid thinking only about today, and to think with my team about the organization of tomorrow, because it will have to take into account the consequences of the crisis." Now, I find this very interesting, and it's also very important because often our natural instinct is to react to the moment, and we neglect to think about the longer term consequences. So can you share with us some of the more recent experiences or anecdotes that you have where these perspectives have served you?
Thank you, Anis, and good evening and good morning to everyone, and Yaurana, as we say here in Tahiti. Well, we took, like all of us, we took immediate action in our airport For example, we had to put in place the new physical distancing measures, the obligation to wear face masks, the day-to-day cleaning operation, the new day-to-day cleaning operations, a lot of signage and a constant communication too. This was absolutely necessary, and our teams did it very rapidly. They reacted very rapidly. But I remember that at the beginning of the pandemic, we wasted a lot of time and we wasted a lot of energy to understand the operational consequences of this new reality for us. We were not well prepared because our organization is prepared for safety and security risk management, which are part of Aéroport's DNA, but not for health risk management. The COVID-19 has introduced a new challenge in the risk management field related to health. Now, the pandemic seems to decrease, but I think that we as managers have to integrate health risk management in our medium or long-term organizations. Let me give you two short examples. The first one, the question is, who will be assessing in our very small organization, who will be assessing the health risks in the future and how? Right now, we are thinking of increasing the range of skills within our risk management team. We need people who know how to assess the new risk related to health and how to adapt our procedures and operations to mitigate these risks. It will be a sort of 3 pillars organization based on safety, of course, security, of course, and health. We are beginning a fruitful collaboration here in Tahiti with the local health service, which will help us to be better prepared in the future on a long-term basis. A second example, also in Tahiti, we have to anticipate what new services will be necessary in the future in our airport. Will it be vaccination center? Will it be pre-quarantine areas, for example? In Tahiti, the terminal building is quite old and Obol is very small. And for example, now the new protocol upon arrival already includes a D-Day antigenic test, which means strong needs for more space for the test operation itself, but also more space for queuing because of the delay caused by the test. So we need to anticipate on a medium or long-term basis the use of our very limited space accordingly with these new priorities. Will it be retail or vaccination center, for example? That are the two examples I would like to give you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that perspective. I'm sure, Mr. Ratron, that many other airports face the same dilemma, as they were going through the pandemic, because a lot of us were caught surprised by some of the health requirements that needed to be in place at the airport. Even now, our plan to shift and adapt due to the ongoing surges and waves of the COVID infection. And that's still happening even today. So Mr. Kishore, were there any particular plans or priorities that you set up for 2021 that had to change or you had to adapt due to the persistent pandemic?
This pandemic is really, I think it is extracting the best out of us, because none of our traffic projections are no longer valid. If you know, just before the pandemic, India was the fastest growing civil aviation market in the world. In fact, for example, our Hyderabad airport in particular, if you take it as an example, we were handling around 10 million passengers annually in 2016. And by the time 2020 came, we were almost handling 23 million. So within a span of 4 years, we almost doubled, more than doubled. So that was the sort of double-digit growth which was happening year on year. And we had to invest a lot of amount in the expansion of the terminal. Like our terminal was designed for around 15 million. We did a lot of innovation and revisiting the terminal processes, etc., to extract capacity out of the terminal. So we were handling 23 million out of the existing terminal. Parallelly, we were expanding to a 40 million sort of a terminal. A huge terminal expansion was happening. Now suddenly this pandemic struck, and what we see, from 23 million, we have fallen down to last year in the 2020, we handled only 7 million. So almost 1/3 of the traffic. We had to do a lot of iterations on what could be the sort of recovery which the COVID pandemic will have. As you know, each expert, each consultancy agency was giving its own V curve, W curve, L curve. So we had to create a lot of scenarios and see what could be the traffic which will be handling in 2020. In fact, after the first wave got receding, we thought it will be normal because vaccinations have come, it will be normal. So we just estimated in the month of February that we'll be doing anything around 15 to 17 million of traffic in 2021. Come April, suddenly this exponential second wave which hit us, and today I am revising it back to maybe 7 million. So from 23 million, 10 million, 10 million to 17 million, 17 million to again 7 million. So this is how the entire operations, entire financing, the entire business plan, we keep on reviewing. Maybe now the frequency is almost every month we are revisiting it. And as you know, it is a regulated asset in India. Airports are regulated assets. So the entire aero revenues is basically what the regulator gives us in terms of the passenger fee, in addition to the landing and parking. The number of movements are significantly reduced. So the landing parking revenues are vanished. The regulator fee was fixed when the pre-COVID. So the traffic was more. Per pax fee, with the almost decrease in the passenger traffic, the revenues has come down. Non-aero revenues have taken a hit. So, and as you know, in an airport sort of a system, almost 70 to 80% are fixed costs. So there is no way I can retrench people on a humanitarian basis because I don't know. The traffic may jump again and I need these people. So really a lot of innovation, lot of strategy, business thinking is happening. This is one side of the operations, one side of the business. The second side is to see that the terminal is ready, business continuity happens, people are safe and protected, so that anytime the turnaround happens, we are ready to do this. So in fact, my plans are keep changing almost by the second, by minute, by day. And we are also trying to do advocacy to the government. This will be the first mode of transport which will bounce back. So we have been sensitizing the governments as to how they should ensure that the message goes into the public that aviation is one of the safest travel, and how do we bring out standard protocols, because India is a huge country and the health sector is both with the federal governments and with the state governments. So we are trying to advocate to see that there's a uniform set of protocols for the domestic travel, because ours is almost 60 to 70% is domestic traffic. So we've been doing on all these fronts. So lot of scenario planning, lot of risk analysis, lot of proactive advocacy initiatives we've been doing. And I hope the bounce back times will be just around the corner, and we'll see the civilization picks up much faster than what we are anticipating.
Thank you, Mr. Kishore. I'm sure there are also some considerations where you had to maybe scope down and reduce some of those expansion plans that you talked about in the beginning. How does it affect your capacity? How are you introducing technology into the equation so that you can be more efficient? Can you comment a little bit on that?
So as far as the what I should say, changed SOPs for passenger travel, I think now we've been focusing more on the contactless travels. Contactless travel, including the information counters, we have made it virtual. So there's no one sitting in the information counter. You have a large screen, as if now how we are doing the video conferencing. The information resource is sitting somewhere in a remote place, and he can directly interact with the passengers. Now, what has happened is with this focus on the contactless travel, Now we are speeding up the biometric processing of the passengers. So along with Government of India, we have come out with an initiative called DigiYatra, wherein the face would be the boarding card. That is the ultimate objective what we have been doing. In fact, it started pre-COVID, but now we are speeding it up. And we assume that maybe in the next 6 to 8 months, some of the airports in India will be in the front runners in implementing the biometric processing of passengers. So as far as possible, what we're trying to see is like what Jean-Michel has said, social distancing, enforcing mask, what I should say, wearing of masks as a mandatory thing within the terminal and within the airport, and bringing in this biometric processing for as far as possible, self-backdrops, so that no agents will be in touch with the passengers. So these are some of the technology-based initiatives what we have been doing. And I think this will be the new norm of travel, even post-COVID and post-pandemic, because we don't know what sort of pandemics keep coming again and again. So this is a learning for the entire world to change our processes, use technology, do almost self-servicing as the basic foundation for travel. I think this will be the new norms of travel. So we have been, GMR has been in the forefront, at least in deploying these technologies, advocating to the regulatory agencies, the security agencies, and ensuring that to the extent possible, the airport terminal is a safe place for passengers to pass through. That's what we've been working on.
Thank you, Mr. Kishore, for that very lengthy explanation. Mr. Ratron, what about you? Were there any plans that you set out for 2021 that you had to change and adapt in a similar manner?
Yes, just like Mr. Kishore, we had a question of cash just after the beginning of the pandemic, because we are a small airport with only less than 2 million passengers before the crisis. But anyway, even if it's a small airport, we had various consequences of the crisis. The first one is, of course, medical consequences, but the second one was economical consequence. And the question rapidly became, what about our cash capabilities? And I give you just two examples to give you some input on what happened in Tahiti. French Polynesia is made of almost 120 islands, of which 76 are inhabited. And it's a territory as large as Western Europe, with 46 airports, domestic airports. Here in Tahiti, the domestic air transportation network is absolutely key for Polynesian people, because you cannot travel by car or by train between Tahiti and the other islands. And even traveling by boat is often difficult due to the very great distances. Therefore, domestic travelers are very important to us. And we had planned the complete renovation of the domestic check-in and boarding areas in 2020. And we couldn't do that. It wasn't possible to do it because the complete change in our cash use priorities. And this is a sort of vicious circle, because as soon as you delay investments, the infrastructure gets older and the passengers' satisfaction gets lower, and it's a sort of vicious circle. It's very difficult to cope with that. On another level, we had to adapt our retail and food and beverage development plans. Not only we were facing reduced investment capabilities, but it has been more and more difficult to find companies ready to operate and invest in such pessimistic times. But in a way, we were lucky here in Tahiti, because Tahiti International Airport is located very close to the city center. And there are a lot of people living here in a very short distance from the terminal. So even if our plans had to change, we finally have attracted local brands, mostly in the food and beverage field, who were interested in our very specific catchment area. In the end, plans have changed, but we still have plans, fortunately.
Right. Thank you. I'm glad you found that small silver lining for the airport there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I also understand that you gentlemen have questions for each other. So I would maybe like to invite Mr. Ratron, to ask your question to Mr. Kishore first.
Mr. Kishore, I guess that you have also a very important domestic activity in your airport. You said that 1 minute ago. And I assume that you have had a strong pressure from the local authorities in order to avoid the spread of the virus to the other parts of the country and via domestic flights, mostly. How did you manage this pressure?
Jean-Michel, I think that's a very relevant question, because that is what we have been undergoing in the last 18 months, dealing with the governments. Because pandemic is a situation where each government is trying to see how to contain the pandemic. So really, we cannot find fault with the governments if they come out with a stricter quarantine protocols, etc. And as a citizen of the country, as a very responsible corporate entity, we should work along with the government to see that the pandemic is contained. So that was there in back of our mind. And you rightly pointed out, and I was mentioning before also, in India, almost 60 to 70% is the domestic travel. It's a huge country. And we almost have 23, 24 provinces within the country. And each provincial government has the right to determine what should be the quarantine procedures, how they want to tackle the situation or the pandemic. So we had to, in fact, work one with the government of India, which is the federal government, and also with the provincial government to see that passengers are not put to any inconvenience because of the very strict quarantine protocols. But what we were trying to tell them is how to be more practical. So one initiative along with the advocacy, what we have done is we started across India, all the major airports have started the testing centers within the airport. So what we have convinced them is any arriving domestic passenger, they can basically get tested. If the state government feels that it is very, very important that people should be clear. So all the airports started the testing centers to begin with. This is, I was telling, in the later part of the first wave. And then we went into a regime where we said that rather than testing on arrival, testing on departure will be important. So that sort of a change we brought in. And especially the province where Hyderabad is located, very proactive government. So we took a lot of, they were one of the progressive governments where they said that any domestic travel, no quarantine will be there. There will be some preliminary screening at the airport, wherein the temperatures will be monitored by automatic thermal guns, and the testing certificates will be uploaded through a web portal before the passenger arrives. So it was like, we ensured it was seamless. At the same time, the basic information which is required by the government to track a person if he tests positive was there. So this is for the domestic travel. We also had international travel, especially in the first phase. It was all repatriation of the citizens which were stuck in other countries. Similarly, the foreigners who were stuck in India, they were going out. So what we did is we worked along with the government of India. We came out with a web portal where the test certificates can be uploaded by the passengers even before they start their travel. In fact, government of India has come out with a procedure wherein 72 hours before they travel, if the test result is negative, there will not be any quarantine procedures, even for the foreigners when they arrive into India. So that is how it was done during the first wave. But suddenly the second wave, when it happened, it had a big hit on the international travel. Almost the international travel is now almost come to very negligible this thing. As I mentioned, domestic travel has fallen down to like what it was, like almost 15%, 10% of pre-COVID this thing. But our confidence is once the situation becomes normal and with vaccination picking up, the bounce back of domestic travel will happen very fast. Because we are phase one, we almost reach 70% of pre-COVID traffic. So that is bound to happen. So now we are working with the governments to come out with a digital travel pass sort of a concept. I'm sure you are aware, you yourself being a tourist destination. The concept of digital travel pass, wherein the vaccination certificate and the testing certificates can be incorporated in the travel pass. so that the passengers will not have any inconvenience when they travel through the airports. So that is what we are working upon. And luckily, I'm very happy to tell you that the second wave is receding very fast. It is, and the predictions say that by end of this month we will come back to almost like what was the situation at the end of the first wave. So that is one thing we are doing, and we are also using this time to get ready for the third wave. Now the experts are saying there could be a very big third wave, so we are using this time to see that we are prepared for the third wave. So this is what we have been doing. So I fully agree with you. There's a lot of dependence on domestic travel in India, and we have been taking cognizance of that. We have been working with the governments to see that the domestic travel bounces back as quickly as possible. Mr. Ratron, I was going through your airport traffic, and I find that once COVID hit, it almost came down to zero. So, and I'm also, I think that yours is a tourist destination. So there's a significant amount of tourism related travel. So how did you face these fluctuations from 1.5 million, 2 million to suddenly coming to zero and not having any tourism traffic? It should be a big challenge for you. So I just wanted to know whether you anticipated this, and if you anticipated, how did you manage this, and what is the current situation, and what is the bounce back, what you are visualizing? It will be very interesting, Mr. Ratron, if you can throw some light on this.
Well, I think in Tahiti it's quite the same as a lot of places in the world. Well, but the fluctuations since tourist traffic were not the same in 2020 and in 2021. In 2020, as you said, we had absolutely no commercial traffic at all, both international and domestic, during almost 3 months. Roughly between end of March and beginning of July in 2020. During this period, we decided to adapt our organization like we all did in this period, according to the needs. For example, we have kept quite the same ARFF level because we are an alternate airport for aircraft cruising over the Pacific. And also because there were still very few international flights for what we are calling territorial continuity between France, mainland France, and French Polynesia, or for medical emergency purposes, for example. On the same time, we have reduced working shifts to quasi-zero for the staff in charge of, for example, the business and VIP lounges, or for the public information center and so on. The most difficult for us was to keep the same level of activity for the staff in charge of airside and landside infrastructure maintenance, because we didn't have any financial support for it. And so it was very hard to finance this staff. In 2021, the situation is quite different because we are now again experiencing a new collapse in international traffic. But the domestic traffic is still alive because the government wants to keep the links between Tahiti and all the other islands, because if we do not do that, it would be a catastrophe on an economic point of view. So we had no confinement this year, and therefore the Polynesians are allowed to travel between Tahiti and the islands. And I can say that we also had a very good surprise, because we have a new development of intra-Polynesian tourism. For example, people living here, because they were not allowed to go to the USA or to go to New Zealand or Australia, what they did before the crisis, now they began to rediscover French Polynesia and the other islands, and it's very good for our domestic traffic, but it's very new, and it's due to the pandemic, thanks to the pandemic. So that's why we try to deal with these fluctuations. And of course, it never happens so how we anticipated it, of course, like everywhere in the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ratron. It's quite interesting that, you know, how sometimes unusual circumstances will bring about new opportunities, right? Like you said, you know, the intra-Polynesian tourism. Yeah, so I guess, you know, all this pent-up desire to travel, you know, finally get to people. It's been 18 months after all. Mr. Kishore, you mentioned just now a little bit, you know, earlier on about the new normal, because, you know, we've been hearing a lot about this concept of new normal. And I think it's safe to say that the new normal has a slightly different interpretation or different meaning for each one of us, right? What that new normal could be for us. So maybe we start with Mr. Ratron. What do you think is the new normal for our aviation industry, and how do you see yourself adapting to the new normal?
Well, I think it's very difficult to say what the new normal will be, really, and precisely. But I think that the pandemic has been long enough to change certain behaviors. I believe that at least two new behaviors will have a great impact on in our industry. The first one is, as we do it today, is the new usage of web conferences or webinars and so on in the professional fields. Even if all of us, we all love to travel around the world, maybe we often find more comfortable to be able to save time and to save money by using these new normal tools in our professional relationships. I think that the consequences on business travel, for example, will be important in the future. In Tahiti, we are not yet really impacted by this new trend, but due to the great distances between French Polynesia and the rest of the world, the development of digital conference tools, for example, will become an opportunity to meet easily in the future while saving time, while saving money, and while saving jet lag also. So in the future, we probably will have to focus more and more on tourism, on international tourism, maybe to compensate the decreasing of business travelers. Actually, you can have a digital conference, but it will certainly be more difficult to meet people here in Tahiti and to enjoy our beautiful islands only on a screen, even if in augmented reality. So we have to focus on tourism to compensate that. The second change is also related to the development of digital solutions. During these last months, particularly during the confinement periods, a lot of people changed their consumption behaviors and increased their online shopping habits. I wonder if this will have an effect on our commercial and retail activities in the future. In Tahiti, online shopping is probably less popular than in continental countries because the delivery times are very long than elsewhere in the world, are longer than elsewhere in the world. But we will have to adapt one day or another to these new habits. We probably will have to develop new retail offers, maybe focused on products more difficult to find online, for example, art and crafts and local specialties. But it's a great challenge here in Polynesia because we only have very limited production of goods here in our islands, and it will be difficult to find these products and to propose these products to our customers and to our travelers. That will be a challenge for us.
Mr. Kishore, you mentioned some just now about having the digital pass, traveler's digital pass and all that. Do you have anything else to add as far as new normal is for you?
I agree with what Mr. Ratron has mentioned regarding what could be the impact of this post-pandemic times, the new norm, what we have been discussing. Another two aspects of new norm, it will be a total change in how the airport designs will happen, the terminal designs, how it will happen. Because today it will all be off-site check-in. Like if you see 10 years back, people used to come, stand in the check-in counters and show their physical air ticket, and then they used to get the boarding card. Now, last 10 years, even before the pandemic, irrespective of the pandemic, many are doing online checking. So the concept of providing real estate or space for the check-in counters will be done away with. Now, post-pandemic, what we are saying is, in fact, Government of India has mentioned that 95%, 99% the checking should happen offset at the homes or at the self check-in kiosks, and then the self backdrops will come into picture. So what I'm trying to say is the entire traditional way, the classical way of terminal design will change. So the pre-security area, what we are currently having, that will be minimized, and you will have more space for the post check-in sort of a facility. And that means enhance the capacity within the same physical space. So that is one thing what I feel that in the next few years, the way the terminals are designed will drastically change. That is number one. Number two, what I want to mention is the international network what we have. Traditional model was you have these big international hubs, be it Dubai, be it Changi, Singapore, be it Atlanta. So these are and London Heathrow. These are some of the international hubs. Now people prefer direct flights because minimum touch, minimum avoiding transit this thing, so that exposure will be minimum. So we see long haul flights gathering more prominence, direct to direct flights gathering more prominence in the post pandemic situation. So we are already seeing many of the US carriers now, they are ready to put flights directly from India to US. Either it was through some European hub or the Middle East hub. And with the efficiencies in the aircraft equipment coming in, I think the hub concept also will drastically change in the post-COVID or the post-pandemic era.
So thank you so much for your time, more so for your insights, Mr. Kishore and Mr. Ratron. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I know many of you have not yet had the chance to visit Beijing's Daxing International Airport since its opening in September 2019. Our sponsor, Kone, is bringing Daxing to us. So before we move on to the next segment with two other CEOs, let's take a look at the video.
那个大兴机场航站楼呢，是一个拥有70万平米的一个航站楼，然后设计师的设计呢非常有这个视觉冲击力，从空中俯瞰呢像一个展翅飞翔的凤凰。那个大兴机场为了提高旅客出行效率呢，是把旅客安检后的最远端的步行距离压缩到了600米，也就是说，旅客在安检以后到达最远端的步行距离是控制到了8分钟。它是从2个层面，第一是进出港旅客混流，然后第二一个就是缩短了这个旅客步行的时间。那个大兴机场呢是作为首都机场之后的北京第2个大型的机场，它的日均吞吐量达到了10万人次，然后顺畅高效的客流呢对于大兴机场来说是非常重要的。因为这样，它既保证了旅客出行的体验，然后也同时给我们管理方呢减轻了很大的负担。自动扶梯呢是承载旅客输送的重要的一种特种设备，然后咱们航站楼里边的大多数的乘客都是通过自动扶梯到达出发层、到达层还有登机口的。核心要求就是设备故障率要低，然后可以检测设备的运行数据。 通力是一个极具社会责任的企业，在可持续发展方面做出了长足贡献。这与我们大兴机场的理念呢也是不谋而合。这也是我们选择通力合作的最重要的原因之一。而且通力始终以客户至上为原则，然后安装团队与我们配合也非常默契，维保服务也非常到位。
All right, it's my pleasure to welcome now two other CEOs into the conversation in CEOs Forum 2.0, further demonstrating the rich diversity of the ACI Asia Pacific community. We have Mr. Kyung Wook, President and CEO of Incheon International Airport Corporation. Thank you for joining us from Korea, Mr. Kim. We also have with us Sheikh Aimen Ahmad bin Ahmad Al Hosni, CEO of Oman Airports Management Company, dialing in from Muscat, Oman. Sheikh Aimen is also the Secretary Treasurer of the ACI Asia Pacific Regional Board. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you, Sheikh Aimen. We just had a fruitful discussion with Mr. Ratron of Tahiti Airport and also Mr. Kishore from Hyderabad, and really appreciated their leadership and their insights. So we're really excited to hear from the both of you as well. Mr. Kim, firstly, we'd like to welcome you to ACI Asia Pacific Community. Having just assumed your role at Incheon International Airport as President and CEO earlier this year, I think February, I believe, right? You came in at a very challenging juncture of the aviation industry. So prior to joining Incheon, you were the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport for Korea, and obviously familiar with the transportation and aviation sector. But now you're sitting on the other end, you're sitting as an airport operator, the other side of the table. So can you share with us some of your first impressions and whether you had to adapt your leadership skills from the previous experience to suit the airport environment?
And thank you for the question. As you said, I worked for the government until the end of 2019. At the time, my job was to supervise IIAC, but now I have come to the position to be supervised by successors. Anyway, change is natural and very nice thing in any time in life. I think that being a civil servant and being a CEO are different in many aspects. The government policy pursues more ideal goals like public interest and long-term visions. Managing a corporation requires a more realistic attitude in a relatively short-term basis. Personally, I feel very happy to have opportunities to experience both. Moreover, in Korea, IIAC is the #1 company with which young people wanted to be employed. Personally, it's an honor to be a president of such a preferred corporation. Precisely speaking, IIAC is not an ordinary private corporation because it is owned by the government. I just now talked about the differences between the government policy and the private business. But I think IIAC should take the middle ground. Keeping balance between public interest and business profit is very important. Now that we are in the middle of a COVID-19 crisis, public interest is to be emphasized more than profits. In this end, IIAC is waiving huge amount of rent and charges for the commercial tenants and the aviation operators. The waiving amount was as much as $560 million in 2020. As a result, Incheon Airport had to take a big damage. Last year, the annual deficit of IIAC was $360 million, and I'm afraid it will be double this year. Instead, we chose to save a lot of jobs. I believe protecting the aviation industry and maintaining social stability are what the Korean public expect for us to do. And so you asked about leadership skills. As far as leadership is concerned, my belief is that the honest communication is the most effective way to solve problems. In this respect, I think there is no difference between public administration and corporate management. Even though my position has changed, but I maintain this principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, for that perspective. I think it's very interesting because you've seen both sides of the perspectives, both sides of the table. Sheikh Aimen, what do you think is the most important skill that a leader should have in navigating through the pandemic? And whether you have any experiences or any anecdotes that you want to share on how you've managed to keep the people's morale and spirits up during these trying times.
I would like to thank ACI on this opportunity. ACI is really doing a great job within the region that it's covering, ACI Asia Pacific, and it's really being supportive to all airports in this region. I would like to say that as a leader, you always need to adapt to change. If someone came to me at the beginning of last year, 2000, and told close the airport for half an hour, I would really not believe him and probably say that it's not true and it doesn't work like that because airports doesn't close. Today, looking at the back and seeing what happened, and we closed for several months because of this pandemic that we've never experienced in our lives. I think many decisions has been made. We've done lots of changes in our operations. We had to shut down 2 piers out of the 3 piers that we have in Muscat Airport. We closed the other airports in the ones that we are operating, the other 7 airports. We had to adapt different kind of scenarios where airport operator normally thinks and looks about the easiness and the process of passengers and seamless process. Today, we're thinking of the HSC and the safety of the passengers and how secure we should make them to get to the aircraft without having any of the pandemic connectivity and the being away from each other, whether it is a passenger or a staff member in the airport. I think the airports are working in a different climate right now. They're having the distancing stickers all over the airports, trying to make sure that airports are safe for passengers. Dealing with going back to your question, dealing with the team. There is lots of pressure that comes to the team, whether it is in the operations level or even at their homes. We try our best to minimize and make the pandemic affect us less. We've even changed our rosters and made Team A and Team B and the executive management. And Team A comes to office on different dates. Team B goes to office in different dates so that we make sure that there is continuity process, and this is cascading downwards even with the rest of the team. We really have a big effect by getting less passenger numbers, less cargo, less operations, and that by itself have affected our revenue, and obviously we had to rearrange our expenditure accordingly.
So I guess, Sheikh Aimen, what you're saying is that it has to do with the ability to change, embrace that change, and being able to adapt to the changes fairly quickly.
Definitely.
That will be key, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. We talked about the change in leadership skills, that you've had to do some adaptation. But even now, Mr. Kim, we have seen shifts. People are still, doing the adaptation because of the waves and the surges of the COVID infection. It isn't over yet. How have you adapted those plans in this case for Incheon?
All over the world, the aviation industry suffers from the pandemic without any exception. It is true that nobody could have predicted this crisis in advance until it actually happened all of a sudden. But now, forecasting the future becomes a crucial factor which decides the destiny of the airports. An accurate forecast will bring us opportunity, while an incorrect forecast will undermine competency. How to deal with this uncertainty is a very serious challenge for any airport operators. When you think this pandemic lasts for a long period of time, it is reasonable to cut costs by reducing investment and employment. But if you think the pandemic will end sooner or later, it is desirable to maintain a normal operating level. As far as Incheon International Airport is concerned, we did not change our operation level, partly because we think the pandemic is not permanent, and also because we need to fulfill our social responsibilities like employment protection. At Incheon International Airport, the fourth phase airport construction project is now underway. This $4 billion project aims to enlarge passenger capacity to up to 106 million people per year, and to add one more runway by the end of 2024. Because this is a long-term project, we are also investing according to the original plan without any change. Fighting against COVID is a government's responsibility, but airports still have an important role in this effort. Incheon International Airport achieved ACI Airport Health Accreditation and is making every effort to protect airport users from infection. Additionally, we continue to discuss arrival and departure process improvement because it is important to keep the public health when international passengers increase from the recovery stage. If we hope to escape the crisis as early as possible, it is necessary to verify that airports can handle the health issues even when the government lifts the restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. We've seen how plans had to shift and adapt due to the ongoing waves and surges of the COVID infection. Sheikh Aimen, what are some of the things that you have to change in terms of your plans for 2021, things that you've set out for your team in 2021, and because of this persistence of the COVID infections that you've had to adapt and change accordingly? If you can share some of the experiences and some of the more recent cases for you.
Yeah, what we did actually along with the team is we tried our best to minimize the cost, reduce certain projects, make sure that we adapt to change, spend more on the IT side, where we try to make the seamless process for the passenger, where he can use the touchless kiosks, procedures, and not to interfere with human as much as possible, to make less connectivity between the passenger and the services given to him. We've also have shifted our investments from different parts to suit the pandemic and the new way of life that's actually being experienced right now. I just wanted also to talk about what we did even at the beginning of the pandemic, where we had to join with the private sector to do the PCR testing. We floated an RFP, and it was an international RFP where we brought the international companies that does PCR testing, and have a joint venture with them, and entered to this arena where we started generating new revenue stream. So if you see in the previous years, the non-aero revenue doesn't have anything when it comes to the health issues. Today, we have joined with a private health sector organization, and we started doing some commercial activities inside the airport to cover the process of the pandemic of the coronavirus.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sheikh Aimen. I guess, that seems to be the trend. Everybody's fast-tracking their technology implementation, like you said, going into contactless and kiosk type of technology. And yeah, we've heard also that sometimes, there could be a silver lining, like in your case, where you have found the partnership to do the private testing that brought in additional non-aeronautical revenue for you. So thank you, sir. I understand that you each have a question for each other. So perhaps, Sheikh Aimen, you would like to ask your question to Mr. Kim?
Sure. It's a good pleasure to ask. And Mr. Kim is actually heading a very well-esteemed airport, which always gets number one in the world. And we are happy that this airport is in Asia Pacific because we're proud of it, all of us. Mr. Kim, I recall that Incheon Airport celebrates 20th anniversary this year. How is Incheon preparing to make a new leap towards the future?
Thank you, Sheikh Aimen. For the last 20 years, Incheon Airport has focused on constructing top-class airport facilities and achieving the highest level of service. However, ever-changing environment requires us new strategies and that go beyond the traditional way of achieving growth. In the past, we used to value the physical expansion and focus on making profits out of commercial facilities. As for now, it is crucial to reset our priorities to provide customers with satisfaction and future-oriented innovations. It is also important to put our resources into expanding airport infrastructures and updating safety management. In response to new business environment, we established the new vision for the next 10 years. Our new vision is we connect lives, cultures, and the future. To realize this vision, we will put customer satisfaction over making profits. That's what we believe an airport should do. We'll offer our customers innovative experience and ever-improving and updating services of comfort, luxury, and technologically advanced. We plan to enlarge cultural activities such as art display or musical performances in the airport terminal. For the customers' benefit and sustainable future, we are in the process of preparing our airport to be carbon-free by 2040. Lastly, we always plan to be introducing cutting-edge technologies like a vertiport for UAM to maximize the customer's convenience and operational efficiency. With these efforts, we'll position ourselves as one of the world's most competitive airports. Sheikh Aimen, I've heard that you are playing an active role as a board member of ACI World and ACI Asia Pacific. As a new airport operator, I wonder, what are the initiatives you have been focusing on as an ACI board member?
Thank you. Very good question. As you know, I'm being the board secretary for Asia Pacific, plus vice chair of the World Governing Board. We are actually trying to make and achieving ACI as a world-class organization, strengthening the organization in the world and in the aviation industry, trying to actually improve the communication between airports and seeing what is the strength parts there for airports to join hand and be in a better position when it comes between airports and airlines. We're strengthening airports' position with IATA and ICAO also through this forum, and we make sure that this umbrella covers the knowledge between the airports and support airports in certain initiatives. We also lobby for making better rules and regulations in the world for airports and improve sustainability and support small and medium airports towards the best connectivity. We also support and look at the convenience of passengers. We're trying to make sure that airports become in excellence, whether it comes in customer service or the carbon accreditation or what have you. So we're working hand in hand with airports to improve their services given whether to airports or passengers and airlines, obviously.
Sheikh Aimen, I think this is a good segue into the next question because we keep hearing about this new normal, right? And I think with your position on the ACI board now, the regional board, I'm sure there are discussions about how to reach certain standardization across the airports, for new normal. And every one of us have a slightly different interpretation or different perception about what that new normal is. So could you tell us, from your perspective, what do you think is the new normal for airports in the future? And also, how do you see yourself adapting your leadership to cope with this new normal?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Anis. As you all know, myself and Mr. Kim and you should sit on a stage and talk to each other in person. Look at us today. We are facing a screen and talking, on a video conference. So this is one to start. This is one new normal. The other new normals, airports now became hospitals. We have too much of, health sector and nurses inside the airport to do PCR testing, to do, health check. We have the quarantine is a new normal in countries for travelers. We have the vaccination certificate that we are asking before. We don't ask for this in the check-in counter. Today, we're asking for all of those checklists to make sure that, we abide to the rules and regulations. We have the measuring cameras, we have the the temperature checking before entering the airport. So those are new normals that became normals now. And I think the new normal is going back to life, the old life before the pandemic. I think we need to work hand in hand. The whole world should fight this pandemic. We need always to think ahead of the game. So the way that we should support the aviation industry is to send a positive message to all our clients, whether they are airlines or passengers, to tell them that it is safe to travel. Nowadays, some countries, they're doing categorization for countries. So like there is green, amber, and red. And some countries doing bubble between a country and another. So those are all new normals where we should actually think out of the box on how to adapt them and how to make sure that we send a positive message to our customers, the passengers, and tell them it's safe to travel. It's easy to travel. It's more convenient to do it rather than when it used to be at the beginning of the pandemic. So I think we need to do lots of communication, and this is one thing we're doing today. We need to do marketing. We need to walk the talk. When we say that our airports are safe, we should invest and make sure that our airports are safe. We should make sure that there is a distance between a passenger and another. Does it affect our capability and our load factor and the capacity? Yes, it does. But I think we should take it step by step to go back to 2019 numbers. The benchmark today with all of the airports and airlines is going back to 2019 numbers. And I'm sure that this will come, but we need to always join hands and work together and fight the pandemic.
Thank you, Sheikh Aimen, for that reflection. How about you, Mr. Kim? What are your thoughts on the new normal, and what might be some of your priorities in the new normal?
I think that normal is a conception that is changing over time. In that, the current normal once was a new normal in the past. A normal often changes when there is a big shock, like wars, terrorism, such as 9/11, serious economic recessions, and so on. And I think COVID-19 will be a driving force to change what is considered normal. So what is normal in aviation industry before COVID-19? I think that it was deregulation. The international flight was considered privilege until the mid-20th century. From the 1990s and 1980s or 1990s, more and more countries came to adopt liberal policies. Air routes were developed thanks to the open sky policy, and international passengers increased due to competitive market pricing. With this background, aviation and the airport industries have made an eye-opening growth over the past 40 years. However, COVID is changing this trend. We can interpret the current situation as a return to the regulation. In the past, they curbed aviation to protect their domestic aviation companies. But now, governments across the world introduce the extreme border restrictions for health reasons. Vaccinations will help countries reopen their borders, but there will be a time lag, country to country, in accordance with the new normal will regulation in relation with public health. Terms such as vaccine passport and the travel bubble imply that discriminatory regulations will be applied to cross-border travel. Regulations will be applied based on national disease control capability or vaccine procurement. Travelers' preference will also be influenced by each nation's health situation. The aviation industry will go through a long recovery process, but there is a possibility that structural change lasts even longer. Major hub airports, including us, Incheon, must be operated with close observation of such underlying trend. Another new trend is online and non-contact processes. People are now learning how to use non-contact operations in business, education, shopping, and so on. They are getting more and more familiar with the non-contact services, and online techniques are evolving and improving. Leisure purpose travel may be less affected by this trend, but we need to closely observe the changes on business travel, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, for those insights. Now, I know we're running out of time, and I know, Sheikh Aimen, you also are a bit rushed for time, but I want to push for one more final question, if you gentlemen would consider. We just need a 1 minute quick answer from either one of you. A few weeks ago, the question that was asked to our panelists was, what are the panelists thought the industry would look like in 25 years from now? So I'd like to get a quick response from each of you. Maybe Sheikh Aimen, you can go first.
Sure. What I think is, and before I answer the question, I think countries should actually adhere to some rules and regulations, as Mr. Kim just mentioned. I think collaboration between countries, collaboration between the international bodies and countries with airports and airlines should be more connected together and adhere to it. In 25 years, I think we'll see less human interactive and connectivity between the passenger and the agent. I guess I would see probably more technology getting into the airports. Probably the way of flying will change. Maybe you will be kept in a tube and then you go up to the sky and get your flight. I mean, something like that. God knows. But I think things will be as it is, as we see it right now, but technology will be in the airports. I think what we can experience, and I hope I'm right, by 23 end or 24, we'll go back to 2019 numbers, hopefully. But we need to work. This doesn't come automatically. We need really to work hard and talk to each other in the whole world. But I see in Europe, they have one regulator for aviation, and that makes life easier for them. Here in Asia Pacific, we have many, and it takes longer to agree on the way forward. That's a quick answer from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheikh Aimen. What about you, Mr. Kim? A quick 1 minute wrap from you. 25 years from now.
Yes, 25 years is a very long time frame, and technology may progress beyond our imagination. First of all, the aircraft technology will produce remarkable innovation. We'll see both high fuel efficiency aircraft and new aircraft powered by alternative energy sources like hydrogen. This change may lead to a new trend. For example, instead of mass transportation serviced by large aircraft, we might face the age of smaller aircraft to satisfy diversified travel demand. Until now, the aviation industry has covered the interregional and international transport. But with the upcoming introduction of UAM, the role of aviation will be expanded to urban transportation. And I also wonder whether our industry will cover the space travel. We'll see surprising technological advancements in the airport industry as well. Some of the world's most renowned companies now are competing for developing self-driving vehicles. If this trend is extended to aircraft, so autonomous takeoff and landing systems are developed, airport operation will be fundamentally changed. In the airport, we'll be able to maximize the customer satisfaction using such technologies as big data, artificial intelligence, and walk-through screening technology, etc. Looking at 25 years from now, I expect these technologies will already be common, and every airport will adapt to them already. However, on the way to get that time, there will be a competitiveness gap between the early adapters and the more cautious. So I think that success and failure of the airports will be decided by their attitude to the new technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Very well said. Okay, gentlemen, I think we've reached time now, and although I enjoy our conversation, I'm gonna have to hand things back to Jeannie very soon. But before that, I would like to thank all of you for your time, more so for your insights. And I'm sure that the audience have enjoyed getting to know you better, as well as, more importantly, to glean from the wisdom and the leadership that you provided. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
A big thank you to Sheikh Aimen, Mr. Kim, Mr. Kishore, and Mr. Ratron and Anis for the very engaging conversation and rich insights. I certainly echo in Anis's words of appreciation. Thank you for the generosity of your time. Of course, we wish these conversations could have been in person over a cup of tea, but are grateful for technology in making this possible. Besides technology, we are also extremely grateful to our sponsors and supporters for making this at ACI APAC online series possible. In particular, we would like to give a big thank you to Airbiz, Amadeus, Arab, Kone, Malaysia Airports, Marsh, CITA, the Moody Davitt Report, and Transoft for your contributions and support. We also want to thank the many speakers who participated on the different panels, as well as your teams who worked tirelessly behind the scenes supporting us with the coordination of all the details. A big shout out also to our own behind the scenes crew at Giant Galaxy, Gemex Ideas, and the regional office here in Hong Kong. Thank you for your diligence in tending to the smallest details. Your efforts have not been unnoticed. Lastly, a big thank you to you, our audience, airport members, Royal Business Partners, and industry colleagues who have tuned in online and followed us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and now also YouTube. Do reach out to us and keep the conversations going. For now, I'm still Jeannie Wong, and I will see you when I see you.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.